What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 1 prize picks targets for this week's Wyndham Championship. Last week wasn't all that good through the first 3 days, was pretty middling, had a few slightly negative days, one slightly positive day, but there on Sunday was the banger we were looking for. Ended up going 10, 1, and 2 on the day, just an insanely high hit percentage, and as a result, ended up turning just over $300 in entries to just over $1,600. So it was a epic day to say the least. Only one of my 11 cards ended up not profiting, and that was a 3-leg power play with one prop that ended up losing, and the only prop that ended up not hitting was on the live side, and it was Bryson over birdies, who didn't end up hitting more than 2 birdies in any one round. So obviously a very uncharacteristic performance from Bryson DeChambeau, but outside of that, it was an absolute banger. So really looking forward to this week, and this time around we've got the Wyndham, which is the last event of the PGA Tour season. So after this, they'll be going into the playoff format, so it's the last time we're going to get 156 players in the field, and of course, for anybody that's on that bubble, a little bit of extra drama on the line. They need to go out there, perform this week to secure their tour card, a chance in the playoffs, and more importantly, to guarantee their chances to play in the 2023 season. So a lot on the line, and of course for us, right, on the betting side, it's not like we need any more incentive to play. So in this video, going to cover how I expect the course to play this week, also my top 3 props here for the first round, and as per usual, just going to give you an idea of how to put together your cards, right? It's just not going to be all about the picks here. You're not going to be spoon-fed everything. I do have plenty of additional picks on my Patreon page, so if you're just looking for the picks, just go to my Patreon page, right? That's probably the best place to get them. But if you're looking for more of the thought process and how to put together your cards, and also maybe how you can identify your own props here for the first round, that is exactly what this video is for. So let's go ahead and talk through the golf course to begin. So first and foremost, Sedgefield Country Club, where you can see it is an easy golf course. So let's just go from left to right here at the top. You can see on the top left, scoring average was 1.12 shots under par. So right around 0.7 shots easier than your tour average course. So that tells you first and foremost, it is a birdie fest, and that is despite being a par 70. So par 70, only has 2 par 5s on property, and it still plays well under par. So you're looking at a scoring average in the 68 range, right around a 68.9. And believe it or not, 1.1 strokes under par was actually a little bit harder than most years. Mostly out here, you'll see it play like a stroke and a half, maybe even 2 strokes under par. So last year with the firm and fast conditions, a lot of the numbers that we see on here were actually slightly more difficult than most years. So this time around, might even see slightly easier conditions. It's right around 7,000 yards long. I mean, officially it's 7,100 yards, but with some of the dog legs, it plays a little bit shorter. The driving distance is still right around 290, so a lot of players will be laying up off the tee, but it won't be with like a 3-iron or a 5-iron or something like that. Plenty of them will still be hitting 3-woods out there, but as a result, you see the driving percentage goes up. It's 68.7%, and that is despite this golf course featuring relatively narrow fairways. They are only 29 yards wide on average, which is much more thin than the PGA Tour average. In fact, almost 6 yards thinner than what we're used to seeing. But the reason why the driving accuracy is higher, almost a whole 3% higher, is because a lot of the players are laying up off the tee, right? Even with the driving distance being slightly higher, you get some rollout here. Last year was a little bit of a unique situation because of how firm and fast that it was. The guys that were hitting 3-wood out there, carrying it like 275, 280 yards, were getting the extra 10 to 15 yards of rollout. So this year I'd expect the driving distance to certainly go down a little bit with slightly less firm and fast conditions. And also the driving accuracy to probably actually improve a little bit. So with a lot of the extra bounce that they were getting, a few balls were actually rolling through fairways, which actually lowered this driving accuracy percentage a little bit. So if anything, might see it this year a little bit closer to 70%. The missed fairway penalty is relatively high, so the rough here is relatively penal, but the greens in regulation percentage was through the roof. It was 76.3%, and that is despite the greens here being relatively small. They are only 6,000 square foot per green on average. So PGA Tour average is right around 6,000 square foot. So the fact that they were hit 8.1% more than tour average is eye-opening, right? Particularly if you're going to be an average size surface. The reason for that is that, first off, it's a short golf course, right? It's 7,000 yards. So a lot of those approach shots, as you can see down here, were in the short wedge range, right? 100 to 125 yards, 125 to 150 yards, something like 150 to 175 yards is still something like a middle iron at the very most for these players, if not still something like an 8 iron or 7 iron at the very most. So for a lot of the players, they're going to have no problem hitting these greens, even if they're relatively small targets. And this year, expect a lot of these numbers to improve, as I mentioned. It won't be nearly as firm and fast as we saw in 2021. So this winning score of 15 under par, probably going to be beat this time around. It would not surprise me to see something closer to 18 or perhaps even 20 under par win this event. It is an extremely gettable golf course that is not very long. Despite not having many par fives, again, there's only just 2 on property, you're going to see plenty of low scores, particularly if the wind is going to be low like we have here on Thursday. So in the morning, you can see pretty much non-existent winds. They're in the single digit, in fact, 6 to 7 mile an hour range when it comes to the sustained winds. Wind gusts, a little bit more prevalent throughout the day. You see it goes up to 12 miles an hour in a few spurts. They are between 9 and 10 a.m. In the afternoon, between 4 and 5 p.m. It does get right around 12 mile an hour wind gusts, but that is still not really anything to worry about, particularly when the air temperature is going to be in the 70s and 80s all day, which is absolutely beautiful and ideal for these players. And with all of the tree cover that you have around this golf course, pretty much every single hole is heavily tree lined, so I'm not going to be dealing with many wind gusts to begin with, right? Because of all that protection, I expect players to take this place nuclear low here in round 1. With that being said, what are the props that I'm looking at here? So I'm going to give you one for the 3 major categories that I'm targeting here. And just to give you an idea of, the thought process that is going through my mind when trying to pick these players. So we'll start with birdie or better, where I'm taking the over on last year's champion, Kevin Kisner, at 4.5 birdies. So somebody who obviously has a lot of familiarity with this course. So that's first and foremost. We know he's going to have a, solid grasp on these greens and has putted well here before. And last year went over the 4.5 mark all 4 rounds. Now, that's easy to say for the leader, right? Somebody who ended up winning in the event, you'd expect them to have pretty solid birdie production for pretty much every single day. But on top of that, he's playing in the morning wave, so has an early tee time. Will be out there in the best conditions, right? 6 to 7 miles an hour of sustained winds. But on top of that, more receptive greens, more pristine greens that haven't had foot traffic on them all day. So in general, you have everything going for Kevin Kisner, past champion. Last week ended up missing the cut, but still made, a good amount of birdies. In fact, on his last round, shot 3 under par, or I believe 2 under par, but made 2 birdies on the day. Clean card, just, ended up missing the cut on the number. I'm willing to excuse that, right? When you miss the cut by 4 or 5 strokes, that is a lot more concerning to me. But when it's just like a 1-stroke difference, you were the odd man out at that point. It's something that, if anything, it might even actually be a positive in that player's book, right? Because they were able to take the weekend off, decompress a little bit, maybe get to their swing coach, work on a few things that weren't necessarily working on, or firing on all cylinders at that event, rather than just hardly making the cut, right? Playing through the weekend, being mediocre, finishing in 50th place, and then not having that time to work on your game. So if anything, maybe I'm just grasping at straws there, but I see it as a positive. But more than anything, right? Morning tee time, past champion here. We know he's a great putter, so should play particularly well at this short track. I haven't projected for well over 5 birdies on the slate. And frankly, I'm going with a similar type of mindset for the rest of the board, right? So guys that are teeing off on the morning wave, 4.5 birdies, going to be absolute smash spots. Now, if I'm taking over on guys on 5 birdies, hopefully going to be playing in the morning wave as well. The next category we'll touch on is going to be birdie or better matchup, which I know is a favorite of a lot of you out there. And I know a lot of you like taking the overs here, but in fact, here on Jason Day, we are taking the under against Adam Svensson. So I favor the Adam Svensson side of this matchup. A couple of reasons why. First and foremost, Jason Day, in terms of his birdie percentage, is well past his prime. At this point, he's much more of a par golfer, going to keep himself out of trouble more than he's really going for it out there. And on the other hand, you have wild man Adam Svensson. That guy could not be more of the opposite. I mean, he is an absolute crazy dude out there, taking aim at every single pin. He's making 5 or 6 birdies, and around this, that he's shooting like 3 or 4 over par. I mean, we saw that at the 3M Open. Literally, made 5 or 6 birdies and ended up shooting like 1 over one day, even par the next. This is the type of player that even when he's not playing well, will make birdies in bunches. So in this type of 50-50 format, I mean, that's what I'm looking for. But even more than that, both are teeing off in the PM wave, so it's not like one has the advantage over the other. And last week, Jason Day, somebody who I bet against in a few rounds, actually bet on when he went off there in the third round. I was able to see his game last week. It is all coming down to the putter, and he's been so inconsistent in that category that even if he gets it working, I see him making maybe 6 birdies at the very most. Adam Svensson could do that in his sleep. I mean, like I said, he's an absolute madman. I mean, he's going to make 4 or 5 birdies on his worst of days. So I definitely favor that side. A lot of times when he's on the board in these matchups, I'm trying to fade towards him because, they match him up with lower tier players. Because when you look at his finishing position, right, he's not really the best player on tour. But when you look at how many birdies he makes, or from the fantasy perspective, which is why I'm so familiar with somebody like an Adam Svensson, you know that he absolutely rakes, makes a bunch of eagles, is extremely aggressive, is not afraid to go for it. And those are the type of players that I'm actively looking to target here in the birdie or better matchup board. So that's what I'm taking there with that matchup. Lastly, we've got fairways hit, and we're taking the over at 8.5 fairways on Will Zalatoris. So Willie Z, not known for his fairway accuracy, but if you remember, if we take a look at the board over here, you're going to hit 68.7% of your fairways. That means you're going to hit well over 9 fairways on average at this golf course. So for somebody like Willie Z, who, he might not be an elite off the tee player, we can expect him to hit at least 9 fairways per round, right? I think that's reasonable, but particularly when you consider the amount of times that people are laying up off the tee, and somebody with Willie Z's length, to get it 290, like you saw last year on average, you got to carry it like 270, he can do that with an iron. He's one of the few players that might be able to lay up on most of the tee shots, if not all of them around this golf course, with just an iron off the tee. And we know just how skilled he is at hitting fairways, hitting greens with his irons, let alone a much larger target like a fairway out there. So I expect him to take that type of approach. In fact, last year he did that quite often and ended up hitting the over 8.5 fairways, or at least last year, right, if it would have been a thing, in 3 out of his 4 rounds. So it's something that I'm definitely willing to bet on. He didn't go 4-4 like somebody like Kevin Kisner last year, but somebody, with that type of strategic mindset that he has. He works with Decade Golf, which is a company that does the analytics for him, tries to give him the most strategic route to take on a golf course. I can guarantee you that Decade Golf is telling him to lay up off the tee here with probably a driving iron or a 3-wood off of almost every single tee. And if that's going to be the case, he could very well hit 10 or 11 fairways out of 14 here, let alone the 9 or 10 that we need to hit. So that's what I'm looking at on fairways. A few other guys to consider, and also he's in the AM wave, so he has that going for him too. So the fact that he's teeing off in the morning, that'll be beneficial. A few other guys towards the bottom of the board that are in that same type of boat. So I'll remind you, if you are looking for access to all of the props I'm taking, which for round 1 are over 10 at this point, make sure to go ahead and check out the Patreon. A link is in the description of the video. It is $10 a month. You get access to all of my prize pick stuff, but also the fantasy golf stuff I do for Draftkings, also all the showdown content I'm doing for all of the golf tournaments throughout the year, and access to the community Discord server, which we have guys that know baseball down there, MMA, we got football, obviously I'll be doing here soon. Just a huge community of over 100 bright-minded bettors that you can throw ideas off of there, and honestly, it's a really good time too. We have a lot of fun down there, so highly recommend you check it out if you haven't already. But that's all I've got here for round 1, guys. Hopefully you feel a little bit more informed about making your lineups. Now you have a few picks to go off of here for the first round too, but best of luck with all of your slips. Before you hop on out of here, first off, go ahead and comment down below what your favorite prop on the board is, but also make sure you go ahead and smash that like button. It goes a long way with helping me grow the channel, get this video out there to more people so they can go out there and make banger cards themselves. But if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, which I know a lot of you have, right? But if you haven't already, make sure you go ahead and do that too. That way you don't miss any of the videos I'm putting out in the future. We will have prize picks content for rounds 2 through 4 of this event, so you won't want to miss any of that when it drops. But until then, everybody, again, best of luck with all of your slips, and let's get this cash.